Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are completely dismantling decades of beauty myths to give you the biologically accurate, structurally informed instruction manual for 4C hair. You know, for years, tightly coiled hair has been approached as a problem that just needs to be solved. But what if we replace all that endless trial and error with genuine, empowering scientific understanding? Let's get right into it. So let's kick things off with a pretty jarring paradigm shift. What if the very hairstyles you've relied on for years to supposedly protect your hair are actually the exact reason it snaps? I know, it's a wild thing to consider, right? We spend so much time and honestly so much money trying to force a perfectly good biological mechanism to work based on completely incorrect assumptions. And that brings us to this absolutely incredible quote: 4C hair isn't defective, we've just been using the wrong instruction manual. We desperately need to shift the narrative away from aesthetic prejudice and ground it in actual biological reality. Because here's the absolute truth: 4C hair is not inherently weak, it's not bad hair, and it is certainly not incapable of growth. It's just structurally unique. Section 1. The microscopic bends. To care for this unique architecture properly, we really have to look closely at the physical foundation of a single coily strand. Imagine a thick piece of wire, or better yet, a paperclip. If you leave that paperclip perfectly straight, it maintains solid structural integrity, right? But if you start bending it repeatedly in the exact same spot over and over, well, what happens? The metal experiences mechanical fatigue. Eventually, with enough manipulation, it literally just snaps cleanly in half. That paperclip visual is absolutely crucial here because a tightly coiled strand naturally contains dozens of bends and zigzags. At every single one of those microscopic curves, the cuticle, the outer protective layer of the hair, is naturally lifted and the internal protein is under tension. So the main takeaway is this: when 4C hair breaks, we're rarely looking at a biological failure of the hair itself. Instead, we're looking at manipulation fatigue. It's breaking because of physical forces, like excessive tension from styling, friction from a cotton pillowcase, or honestly even just constantly touching those natural structural bends. Section 2. The moisture illusion. Now, this brings us to a massive challenge with tight coils, and it boils down to a simple 4-word truth: oil is not water. On straight hair, gravity lets the scalp's natural oils travel down the smooth strand super easily. But on 4C hair, those oils basically get stuck at the roots because of all those sharp bends we just talked about, leaving the rest of the strand totally parched. And here is where we make our biggest mistake. We absolutely have to draw a stark distinction between the tactile feeling of a strand coated in heavy shea butter versus the biological presence of true, actual water hydration inside the hair. Slathering dry hair in heavy butters creates what we call hydrophobic buildup. Think of it like wrapping a dying, dehydrated plant in saran wrap. You might think you're locking the environment out to protect it, but when you actually try to water it, the water just beads up and rolls right off the plastic. The roots are still suffocating. Adding more water to hair trapped in hydrophobic buildup does absolutely nothing. You physically have to remove that barrier through proper cleansing to allow true structural hydration to finally enter the strand. So, healthy retention requires navigating a really delicate moisture ecosystem. You can't just blindly apply heavy protein treatments without balancing them with water, or the keratin structure becomes overly rigid, making the hair snap like a dry twig. But on the flip side, excessive water without enough structural protein causes high-growth fatigue. That's when the strand becomes overly elastic, mushy, and just stretches until it breaks. Balance is literally everything here. Section 3. The science of shrinkage. Okay, it is officially time to sentimentally redefine one of the most culturally stigmatized behaviors of 4C hair and instead view it as a total biological triumph. At a molecular level, shrinkage behaves exactly like a perfect manufactured metal spring. When water hits the hair, it temporarily breaks the natural hydrogen bonds, which elongates the strand. Then, as the water evaporates, those bonds reform, pulling the strand right back into its tight genetic coil pattern. No, think about that metal spring again. If you stretch it out with a blowtorch repeatedly through constant heavy tension or heat training, you are going to permanently denature those protein bonds and absolutely destroy its ability to recoil. And that brings us to this really vital realization. Shrinkage is a vital indicator of elasticity, strand memory, and structural health. Significant shrinkage is not a flaw. It's not proof that your hair isn't growing. No way. It is undeniable biological evidence that the relationship between your curl pattern and its moisture responsiveness is completely and perfectly intact. Your spring is healthy.
Section 4. Protective Styling Myths.
Now, dealing with natural shrinkage every day can feel totally exhausting, which is exactly why people turn to long-term styling solutions. But just because a style is braided and tucked away untouched for 8 weeks does not automatically mean it's protective. Look at it this way. If you attach heavy extensions to fine strands, that weight physically pulls the follicle away from its blood supply. You might think you're protecting your hair, but if that style introduces extreme mechanical fatigue and starves the follicle, well, it's actively damaging. True protective styles mandate tension control, scalp access, and moisture balance, for sure. And this is simply because tension does not distribute evenly across tightly coiled hair. There are extreme high manipulation zones: the delicate edges, the nape of your neck, the crown, and basically wherever ponytails are anchored. These specific zones bear the absolute brunt of repetitive stress, making them highly susceptible to traction alopecia. This leads to a terrifying phenomenon: silent breakage. This happens when you pay hundreds of dollars for a style that looks absolutely pristine on the outside, right? But underneath, the constant, unending traction from heavy extensions is slowly pulling your delicate edges out by the root. It completely defeats the whole purpose of length retention.
Section 5. Scalp Access and Cleansing.
The absolute biggest issue with these styles is that they block access to the biological factory where hair is actually produced. This leads to a massive misconception: the myth that dirty hair grows faster. People think if they just leave their scalp alone and let the oils build up, it acts like fertilizer. This is entirely false. Your scalp is skin. Neglecting it under the false assumption that dirt fuels growth is just completely wrong and leads to massive dermatological problems. When you don't cleanse, a toxic barrier starts to form. Every single day, your scalp produces sweat, excess sebum, and dead skin cells. Add in heavy edge control gels and environmental dust, and you've basically created a feeding ground for Malassezia fungi. When trapped for weeks beneath a protective style, this toxic barrier disrupts the acid mantle. It causes severe inflammation, and in response to that stress, your body can actually force those follicles to miniaturize or shut down completely.
Section 6. Rooted in Science.
So, how do we fix all of this? Stepping away from deep frustration means embracing total empowerment and replacing that endless trial and error with true structural respect for your hair. For those of you having some major light bulb moments today, this leads directly into a broader ecosystem of professional support. The Rooted ecosystem includes an advanced educational course, a comprehensive book, specially formulated moisture-supportive herbal products, and retention-focused styling appointments. The whole shebang is designed to build your ingredient literacy and help you enforce healthy, scientifically backed routines. As we wrap up, I really want you to internalize this quote. The goal is not to force 4C hair to imitate straight textures, but to understand how it functions so it can be cared for with structural respect. When you stop trying to fix 4C hair to meet a completely unrelated visual beauty trend and start understanding its baseline biology, your entire personal care paradigm shifts. It's a real game changer. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. We just spent this entire explainer unpacking how an entire culture of personal care was built on trying to force a visual standard instead of looking at actual biology. Think about that missing instruction manual. It makes you wonder, what other perfectly functioning parts of ourselves are we trying to fix simply because we don't understand how they were built to function in the first place? Thank you so much for exploring the science with me today.